It's time for the Onyx News. Extraterrestrials, time anomalies, dimensions, remote viewing, UFOs, UAPs, and USOs, ghostly encounters, abductions, Bigfoot, and more. Your end of the week news source for everything unexplained. Here is your host for the Onyx News Podcast, Margie K.
Hello and welcome to MUFON Midwest. I'm your host, Margie K. And we have a very interesting show for you this evening. I know you're going to enjoy this, so stay tuned for the entire thing. My guest tonight is Dr. Michael Salla. Dr. Salla is an internationally recognized scholar in global politics, conflict resolution, and U.S. foreign policy. He is taught at universities in the U.S. and Australia, including American University in Washington, D.C. Today, he is most popularly known as a pioneer in the development in the field of exopolitics, the study of the main actors, institutions, and political processes associated with extraterrestrial life. Dr. Salla has been a guest speaker on hundreds of podcasts, radio, and TV shows, including Ancient Aliens, Coast to Coast AM, Redacted, and featured at national and international conferences. His Amazon best-selling U.S. Army Insider, which is 3 volumes, and Secret Space Program, 7 volumes, book series have made him a leading voice in the disclosure movement. He's also the host of the popular podcast Exopolitics Today with almost 200,000 YouTube subscribers. And his main website is exopolitics.org. Welcome to the program, Dr. Salla.
Thanks for having me, Margie.
Well, thank you so much. I know you're a very busy man, but, we've got to talk about UFOs and ETs and exopolitics. So, it's certainly a very popular subject, not only among ufologists who are interested in this program, but the general public as well. What do you think? Of course, we had got this new movie out called The Age of Disclosure, which everybody is buzzing about. What do you think about it?
Well, I was pleasantly surprised when I watched it. I mean, my initial thoughts was that it would be kind of like putting out the idea that some of the people involved in that documentary, like Louis Elizondo and Thomas Mallon, that UFOs are unknown, that they are a national security threat, and that they involve non-human intelligence and are definitely not built by the US or the military-industrial complex. And so I was pleasantly surprised that they opened up the documentary to these alternative perspectives, that in fact that there is a legacy program that is in operation, which I thought was a very good way of introducing the general public to the idea that on the one hand, you have people in the Pentagon who want to know about this UFO issue, and they're asking questions. They're going around trying to find out who in the Pentagon knows about it, and that they eventually hit this brick wall, and they describe it as a confluence of the US Air Force, the Department of Energy, different multinational corporations or aerospace companies, and the CIA that have established something that studies UFOs wherever they occur around the world, are involved in crash retrieval operations, and are involved in sanitizing this from public awareness, and that this is then handed over to corporations who study these technologies to reverse engineer them. And that it really kind of, what I thought was good about the Age of Disclosure was that it presented 34 people involved in the intelligence and the government and the military both former and current officials, and it presented them in a way that made it look very authoritative. That, well, in fact, what we have here is kind of like these different levels of approaches to the UFO issue. On the one hand, you have people associated with this kind of like this attempt to find out what's going on, but they're being blocked by this much more powerful, much more resourceful legacy program that goes all the way back to 1947 in covering this up. So I think the documentary did a great job in presenting a perspective that will be very compelling to people who don't know the history, aren't familiar with the true kind of background behind the scenes events happening with the whole UFO crash retrieval reverse engineering process.
And then for those of us who have been doing this for 30 or 40 years, this is some vindication for ufologists, isn't it?
Well, that's such a strange thing, Margie. Vindication, we all want it. We all have been doing this for decades. But what I'm seeing is, what's happening is that, yes, on the one hand, it is vindication for those of us that have been doing this. But as far as the general public is concerned, they're simply not aware of us. I mean, what they're being shown or what they're being introduced to are these new people, these new whistleblowers, or these new researchers. I mean, people like Luis Elizondo, Thomas Mellon, and then you have all these new kind of researchers that are popping up out of nowhere. Jesse Michaels, and of course there's people like Tucker Carlson, and you get and of course Joe Rogan. Well, I guess he's been around for a while, but what they're doing, it's not so much vindication for the old time researchers. It's more or less these new people, these new researchers coming forward and doing interviews with these 34 public officials. I mean, Avi Loeb, the Galileo Project, Gary Nolan, and the Soul Foundation out of Stanford University there. So what I'm seeing is, and of course the Paradigm Institute, that's also been set up by Danny Sheehan. So what you're having is a whole lot of new people and organizations coming forward that are getting the attention. And so it's kind of like it's strange to watch all of this come out, vindicating those of us who have been in the field for decades. But if you're watching the major news feeds and the alternative media, you're kind of not getting people talking about those, people like Richard Dolan, myself, and others who have been doing this for decades, or even Stephen Greer. We're not being cited. We're kind of like being forgotten, and it's like, well, if you're not out there beating your own drum, and then there's really no vindication. It's like, well, it's all these new people that are saying, well, yeah, this is what's going on.
Yeah. Oh, big surprise. It's kind of like this is a new phenomena that's just in the last few years. No, this has been going on for about 80 years. So, yeah, but what do you believe do you believe we're in the midst of a gradual disclosure process that's being orchestrated by military white hats?
Yeah, when I look at the sequence of events that have been occurring starting from 2017, where you had the rollout of the ATIP program, and you had people in Congress being approached by whistleblowers, and that the ideas began to get kind of like this mainstream media attention that UFOs have been recovered after crashing on Earth, that these have been kind of like taken to secret laboratories and have been studied and being reverse engineered, and non-human intelligence is involved. It's like it's introducing these ideas to people, but in a way that at first was not too confronting. It was like just presented as like, these lone whistleblowers making these claims without any real hard evidence. I mean, you had videos of like the Tic Tac and other UFOs that have been photographed by military pilots that were kind of rolled out. But that's nothing new. That's been happening for, as you said, close to 80 years now. You have military pilots seeing UFOs and photos coming out. So that's not new. But I think what we're seeing is a kind of like a steady increase in public interest as a result of this kind of rollout, deliberately involving some very senior people involved, like Louis Elizondo, Chris Mellon, Jay Stratton, and so forth, who have been kind of like getting a lot of attention on the mainstream media. And of course, they've been given the red carpet treatment by members of Congress who have had them come in to do kind of like informal briefings. And there's been a setting up of these different UAP task forces. The first, the UAP task force, and eventually we got now the ARROW, the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office that's been set up, which hasn't been doing a particularly great job. But the thing is that it legitimizes the UFO topic. So people that are interested in this are not being ridiculed anymore. They're in fact being encouraged. And now we seem to be reaching a kind of new point, which is this three-eye atlas, which I think is going to take us into a new stage where at some point there's going to be a realization that extraterrestrial life exists, that it's been discovered, it exists, and that'll lay the foundation for a few years of kind of like the public discourse about, where do the extraterrestrials come from? What are they like? How have they been interacting with us? I mean, how far back in history do they go? What are they doing today? And I think that's going to be slowly rolled out for a few years. And at some point in the future, as this gradual disclosure process unfolds, I think then the evidence is going to be presented, and we'll probably even see extraterrestrials being announced in some public forum, whether it's by the president or Pope Leo or both. Yes,
the Pope would be interesting because, of course, they've been following this subject for a long time, and they've got huge observatories everywhere. And oddly, one of them, I believe, is called Lucifer, which is rather odd. Back to the three-eye atlas for just a minute, because this is a super hot topic right now, and there's all kinds of information coming out on social media, and you don't know what to believe. But Avi Loeb has been quite he's been speaking on a number of shows, big shows, and there seems to be a lot of interest in that. He is of the opinion that it's something that is possibly made by extraterrestrials. What do you think?
Yes, I think Three-Eye Atlas, I mean, Avi Loeb's done a good job in pointing out all of these anomalies. I think he's up to 12 anomalies now associated with it, and he gives it a kind of like a 4 rating on the 10-point Loeb rating for space objects that are extraterrestrial versus natural. And so he's really been opening people up to the possibility that this is extraterrestrial. Now, when you consult remote viewers or people who claim to be in telepathic communications with the different ET groups and all of that, I mean, uniformly what I found is that they're saying that this is a spacecraft of some kind that's cloaked as a comet, which is a very interesting possibility. And when we look at the way in which NASA has been rolling out its images, you notice that NASA has been very careful not to release anything that's too incriminating of this being anything more than just a comet. So that NASA seems to be, deliberately, kind of like down, well, not really giving it a lot of emphasis. I mean, you just see a couple of images from the James Webb Space Telescope.
And they're very fuzzy. They're not clear at all.
Exactly. They haven't been releasing clear images, and yet amateur astronomers seem to be getting better images just using their backyard telescopes.
Yeah.
And that's very interesting, because what we're coming to in another week is starting November 27 up until January 27, you have something called the International Asteroid Warning Network that issued a observation exercise where all amateur astronomers or even professional astronomers will, for that 2-month period, be focused on 3I Atlas. And it's like, wow, that's very, very unusual. That's the first time, because this is set up, the International Asteroid Warning Network is set up, as the name suggests, to be a kind of an alert system to warn humanity in case of any asteroid striking the Earth. But yet 3I Atlas, the closest it's going to get to the Earth is like 1.8 AU, which is like 160 million miles. So it's nowhere near close, but yet this alert was issued. And I suspect it's because on the one hand, you got people associated with NASA who are kind of like downplaying 3I Atlas and its significance. And then there are those, and I mentioned earlier, these white hats that want to get people ready for the truth concerning extraterrestrial life. And they want the world's eyes to focus on it. And I think this is where we get into the idea of mass consciousness changing, because I think the very fact that you issue this international kind of like observation exercise for all the world's astronomers to focus on 3I Atlas for a 2-month period, that guarantees that it's going to generate kind of like non-stop news for the next 2 months. And that'll expand consciousness as people all over the world start thinking about, well, what is it? And we're going to get much better images. And there's always a possibility. And some people, some insiders say that they were told by high-level NASA officials that 3I Atlas is definitely a spacecraft, and that when it makes its closest approach to the Earth, which is going to be December 19, it's going to become clear that this is actually a spacecraft and not a comet.
Yes, this certainly could be a global awakening, because if all of these people around the world are getting pictures with their telescopes, it's going to be all over the news and multiple photos of the same object. And if it is not a comet, the question is over. And so that would be disclosure in one form. Absolutely. And nobody would have to say anything. They would just, maybe make an announcement. Oh my gosh, here we go. It is true. But it's far enough away that people won't panic, because they're not going to say, hopefully they're not going to say it's changing course for Earth, that sort of thing. There was a rumor that it changed course. Do you know about that?
Well, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, I kind of like go to the more authoritative sources like Avi Loeb when it comes to the actual behavior of 3I Atlas, simply because he's on top of the astronomical data. I'm not an astronomer, so I tend to defer to those that have a professional background in that field in terms of the raw data. And so he's talked about 3I Atlas accelerating, and so that acceleration would lead to a course correction. And his latest anomaly is that because of the acceleration of 3I Atlas as it achieved perihelion around the sun, that 3I Atlas is now on a path where it's going to pass close enough to Jupiter where the gravitational field of Jupiter begins to take over in that region of space. So it's kind of like a Lagrange point where the gravitational pull between Jupiter and the sun is equal, and 3i Atlas will pass right by that. And Loeb said that was because of the acceleration. So in a sense, it was a course correction, but nothing too dramatic.
Well, I'm a remote viewer, and I did remote view it. And I was surprised to see intelligent beings inside a craft, with the outer skin being a camouflage. So I'm going to write an article about this pretty soon. I'm sticking my neck out, because I know other remote viewers are saying some crazy, crazy things. Like, I think one of them said he saw an army of Draco reptilians that were probably headed to invade Earth. I'm like, no. So after I heard that, I said, okay, I'll do it. I'll take a look. And that's not what I saw. So it'd be interesting to compare what the different remote viewers are saying.
I did write an article. It's called Multiple Perspectives on 3i Atlas, where I discussed 11 different sources, all kind of like describing 3i Atlas, whether it was through remote viewing, whether it was a contactee, whether it was the scientific data coming from people like Loeb. And what I found was very interesting was that when you look at the 11 different perspectives, and some of them did have that, what you just described, that 3i Atlas is bringing reptilians here, that these are warriors that were sent to be part of some kind of invasion. When you look at the different perspectives, like they break down into the good, the bad, and the indifferent. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. Is people's perceptions of 3i Atlas just being influenced by their own kind of like internal mindset or their subconscious beliefs? And I think that's happening here. And maybe this is something that happens more generally when it comes to the UFO and the extraterrestrial phenomenon. Like, some people are convinced that the whole UFO phenomenon is demonic. I mean, people talk about Collins group. Others, of course, talk about the extraterrestrials as being angelic, Pleiadians. They're here to help us. They're brothers and sisters from the stars. And of course, then you have the indifferent. Oh, well, they're kind of like here. They're watching us. They're just kind of like keeping their distance, and they have no real ulterior desire on humanity and want to see what we decide to do. So yeah, it's very interesting. I suspect that our subconscious belief systems really do influence how we interpret the UFO phenomenon generally, and 3i Atlas in particular.
Wouldn't it also be possible that there are multiple different races of extraterrestrials and people have had different experiences with these groups?
Totally. And that's another question, is like, well, if someone has an experience, say, with a negative extraterrestrial group, whether it's an abduction or you meet a reptilian and you have some sort of battle somewhere, is that because you energetically are bringing that into your life because you have certain issues that need to be worked out in the background, and those that are having positive experiences, they are drawing those positive extraterrestrials into their lives because they do meditate. They are more forgiving and empathic, and they spend a lot of time developing spirituality. I did quite a bit of work with some South American contactees associated with the Rama mission, and that was the approach they took. They said, well, look, if you want to have contact with positive extraterrestrial beings, you got to just put in the time. You got to meditate. You got to develop forgiveness and love and empathy and all of those things, and then you'll have positive experiences. Because if you don't, then you're going to have negative. And so I suspect that there is a correlation between our unresolved stuff, or the internal work we've done to deal with our subconscious issues, and the kinds of extraterrestrials we attract into our lives, whether they're negative ones doing all these abusive things, or positive ones kind of like interacting with us in very positive ways.
I think you're on to something there. I have to agree. That's been my point of view as well. So, okay, we are up on a short break, and we'll be back right after these messages.
The Onyx Network presents a health and wellness spiritually based brand of hemp-derived CBD products made by Hopewell Farm in Harrogate, Tennessee. We apply our Cathara energy work with all of our plants and products. Our products made in small batches with only 2 ingredients of pure hemp, full spectrum crude oil, and coconut-derived MCT oil. Third-party lab tested for potency and legal THC levels with 6 strengths of 1 ounce oil to choose from. Know what you're buying and get what you pay for from Hopewell Farm. Applied directly to a specific area, Hopewell Farm topical salve in 1 ounce and ½ ounce sizes made with pure hemp crude oil, comfrey extract, and all natural ingredients. Find the Hopewell Farm link and coupon code on the Onyx Network website at onyxnetwork.com. That's onyxnetwork.com.
We're back. I'm your host, Margie Kay. We're speaking with Dr. Michael Salla this evening. Dr. Salla, who is JP and why are his UFO disclosures important?
Well, JP is someone that I've known since 2008. And what's interesting about him was that he, in 2017, started taking photographs of triangle UFOs and rectangle-shaped UFOs that were in the vicinity of MacDill Air Force Base. And he was being actually helped by servicemen associated with a secret space program being run out of MacDill. And they approached JP because back in 2008, when I first began to talk with him, now he began having these contact experiences, and he says that he was approached by covert military people that wanted him to work with them. So in 2017 and 18, he's sharing these photos with me, dozens of photos of craft that he says that he was being helped to photograph and even videotape. And some of these craft he went inside. And so he's got photographic evidence of these strange triangle, rectangle-shaped craft that he says are part of a US Air Force secret space program. And he was also being taken inside of the more traditional flying saucer type craft that he said were piloted by Nordic extraterrestrials. So he has photos of those as well. So that began in 2017 and 18. And then in 2020, he joined the Army. And so he served for four and a half years in the US Army and continued to have a lot of experiences with the secret space program and with these Nordic-looking extraterrestrials.
Was he in the secret space program? Was he recruited for that?
Well, he served on multiple missions in the secret space program. I mean, recruitment is typically where a person, signs papers and kind of like consents to be part of the secret space program for a particular period of time. A lot of people say that they were on these 20-year and back programs. So
Yes.
I've interviewed quite a few people like that. But in JP's case, he was never asked to sign up for one of these programs for an indefinite period of time or any period of time. It was that he just participated in missions involving some of these programs. So he was, for example, on missions to the moons of Jupiter, to Ganymede in particular, where he says that he was taken there and there was an ancient extraterrestrial civilization there that was being explored by secret space program, and that they were there to greet these extraterrestrials that had just arrived in our solar system. So he performed missions with the secret space program that was run by US Space Command, and it seems that he was performing these missions because he was chosen to be part of this kind of covert disclosure initiative. And that's why I mentioned 2017, because at that time he was being helped by covert operatives to take photos. Like he says that he would be driving along and a covert operative would pull up next to him in a white van or something and say, "Look up." And he'd look up, and sure enough, there's a craft up there, and so he'd pull over and take out his camera and take a shot of it, and then send it to me. And then later on, he would have memories of interacting with the craft. So there was some sort of mind wipe going on, but he was being helped. And I've written a 3-volume series of books on him, and based on what I've been able to conclude from the whole sequence of events, is that these Nordic-looking extraterrestrials that he began having contact with in 2008 reached agreements with the Air Force where they said, well, we'll exchange some of our technology and our know-how on how to use all this with you, but we want you to kind of like allow JP to play a role in the disclosure process and to protect him in that process.
Has he ever been threatened by other agencies to keep quiet?
Yes, he's been threatened multiple times, and this all goes back again to 2017, where he was, for example, being encouraged to take photos of the craft, of the flying rectangles and triangles, and they're available on my website. They've been released there, and they've been there for 8 years now. And at the same time, he was being approached by people associated with the CIA that threatened him and said, don't you dare take video of that. So it seemed that photos were okay, but videos were like, no. I think the video is much more compelling evidence.
It is.
They were like setting a kind of boundary there, and since that time, even up to recently, he's had people approach him, men in black, tell him or threaten him off in terms of like talking too much about certain topics.
Well, I just had something very strange happen. I had your website in the ticker here, and it has disappeared. So I went back to your email, and it's not in there either. Isn't that interesting? I wonder who doesn't want people to look at your website.
Interesting.
So what is your site?
Exopolitics.org.
Okay, I'm going to try again. Let's see what happens. I didn't spell it right. Let me fix that. I got two L's in there.
Oh, yeah, that'll do it. Yep, it's up there. It's running.
Okay. There we go. We'll see if it stays in the system. Okay, so, and people can get your books there or find out where to get the books, find out more about them as well.
That's right, yeah. I've got 14 books so far on exopolitics that I've released, and I'm working on another one now.
So I feel for JP because I know a number of people who they're witnesses in most cases or investigators. And whenever there's a really big, good case with a lot of evidence, such as at least photographic evidence, there's usually a problem. It's coming from somewhere. There's either an overt threat or they're sending a message in some way to let you know that you're being watched, like your phone's being tapped, or there's vehicles following you that are government vehicles, things like that. So it seems to me that there are different government agencies and they all have a different agenda.
Yeah, well, that is very important that we acknowledge that, and we know that. I mean, those of us that have been working in the field, I mean, you go all the way back to the 1950s. I mean, you had Major Donald Kehoe, as you know, I'm sure, who was the founder of the NICAP UFO organization. I think that was the very first UFO organization set up in the United States. I mean, and he was working with military personnel that were very keen on disclosure and sharing information, pilot reports and data and so forth. But on the other hand, he kept on talking about the silence group, the group that was really trying to stop everything from coming out. And so you can go back, I mean, that's 70 years ago now, and identify the same forces. I mean, now we call it, some people call it the Majestic 12 group, Jehovah, Zodiac, and now some people talk about them as the Legacy program. But it's the same group. I mean, that's a group of officials who have high-level clearance that are ensconced within the national security system, and they have a monopoly on the UFO information, and anyone who gets too close gets threatened, or they have their careers ruined, their security clearances pulled, and so forth. And this, going back to the this Age of Disclosure movie, I thought it did a good job in identifying this kind of conflict between the two faces within the official system, those that want to get the information out and those that are part of this control system.
Do you believe that the presidents have been briefed on UFOs, or is that above their clearance level?
I think the UFO issue is definitely way above their clearance level, and whatever briefing they've received is always tailored to get the president to support one set of policies or another. So, for example, I mean, you have President Ronald Reagan, who very famously spoke at the United Nations about the threat posed by extraterrestrials, and he made a number of statements throughout his presidency where he was talking about extraterrestrials being a threat and how this would unite humanity. So I thought it was very clear that in the case of Ronald Reagan, he was given a limited briefing. So he was told a little bit about it, that these extraterrestrials are a threat and that it would help unite humanity. I think in the case of President Trump, we have other kind of like sources revealing that Trump has been briefed more positive extraterrestrial. Some call it the Galactic Federation, and you had that Israeli scientist, Professor Haim Eshed, also a brigadier general in the Israeli Defense Force, who was the father of Israel's spy satellite program. And he came out and he did an interview where he talked about President Trump being briefed by the Galactic Federation, and that the Federation was telling Trump what would need to happen in order for disclosure to occur. And there have been other whistleblowers like David Grush that has also talked about President Trump being briefed by these positive extraterrestrials. So yes, so I think presidents are briefed to a limited extent, but the ones that control all of the truth about the legacy program, as it's called, and there we're talking about these unacknowledged special access programs where they're studying the debris recovered from these UFO crashes. They're studying the bodies of extraterrestrial intelligences. They're studying the technologies that have been retrieved from these crash sites or wherever else. And that these are very, very jealously guarded and protected secrets. And it really is very difficult for a president to get access to those programs, even when the president appoints a favorable director of the CIA or director of national intelligence or secretary of defense. Even people at that level are denied access, because ultimately the ones who control access are people, are career bureaucrats who've worked
Right.
for 20, 30 years, and they're the ones that make the decision who gets access or not.
Do you think that President Trump will ever meet an extraterrestrial in person?
I think that that's probably already happened. I mean, I think that the fact that he says that there are sources saying that Trump was briefed about these positive extraterrestrials suggests to me that either he or someone close, very close to him, and this is where you get the question about Melania Trump. Could Melania Trump have met with extraterrestrials? I think at some point either Trump or his wife have met or interacted with these human-looking extraterrestrials, and they're being told things. And I tend to have a very positive view of President Trump's efforts to establish world peace, because that's something it's very dear to my heart. I mean, I was a peace researcher from the very beginning of my academic career. And what I've noticed with President Trump in his first term, and especially in his second term, is that he's put a lot of effort into negotiating peace deals between belligerents in international conflicts, and has been very reluctant to get the US embroiled in another forever war. And so what I see there is kind of like very compelling evidence that Donald Trump is trying very hard to promote world peace. And I think he's doing so because this is one of the things he was told by the extraterrestrials, that in order for our planet to thrive, we need to establish world peace. And then these more positive extraterrestrials would be very happy to show themselves, reveal themselves, and sharing a lot of their technologies. But until then we're going to be kind of like kept at a distance as a kind of like a very savage planet, that's divided by tribal warfare mentality, and that would be a danger to the community. So I think, to me, when I look at his policies, I see someone that's trying very hard to establish world peace, and I think he deserves to be supported for that.
Well, for many, many reasons, and the extraterrestrials helping us is a good reason, because we do need a lot of help in many areas, including medical help. It seems people are getting sicker and sicker, and there's been a lot of talk about the Medbed technology lately. Do you think that President Trump knows about that, and do you think that will be released to the public?
I think President Trump definitely knows about the Medbed technology. He, a couple of months ago, reposted a kind of viral video clip of medbeds that he was involved in, or that there was an announcement concerning medbeds, and he reposted that, and I think he did that because he wanted to get the word out that these med beds are real. That's not science fiction. And I know that it's not science fiction. I mean, I've been told about these med beds going all the way back to 2014 when I interviewed my very first secret space program insider, and he talked about going through a med bed. I have heard from JP also, who says that he experienced the med bed at Eglin Air Force Base, and that this was something that kind of helped him at that time deal with one of the illnesses that he was experiencing. So these med beds are very real. They are derived from the kind of like work of electromagnetic healing that was kind of began to come into the mainstream consciousness in the 60s and 70s, but it was very heavily suppressed. There was a book by Robert Becker called The Body Electric, and what that described was a process whereby if you induce a specific electromagnetic frequency to different parts of the body, it could be healed, and you could actually have limbs regrown, organs regrown, and so forth by identifying particular frequencies. And he began using salamanders who have this ability to be able to regrow tails and so forth, and he began to experiment with them to see that, well, this is all about inducing the right currents. But that technology was very heavily suppressed, but in the classified world, it was studied very, very closely. And I think this is part of the way the system operates, whereby public science or open source science, certain ideas are discredited, like electromagnetic healing is discredited, but in the classified world, they don't use kind of like we do prescription drugs and so forth, because that's not going to be very effective in outer space. What you need is something that can deal with the problems, health problems experienced by personnel in these secret space programs, and that's where the med beds come in. So they've been around for decades, and I think what President Trump was doing was indicating that this is a technology that's been around for a long time, and he is aware of it, and that steps are being taken to release this technology to the world. And it'll be a revolution in the medical industry.
I think everybody has been saying lately that they sense that something big is coming. I don't know how many hundreds of people I've spoken to that are saying the same thing. They just can't put their finger on it. But what do you think that big thing might be?
Yeah, I think it might be a couple of things. I think, we're going to start understanding that extraterrestrial life is real, and that I think we're probably going to begin this journey of understanding what extraterrestrial life is by being introduced to our inner Earth cousins, or our undersea cousins, if you like. That these are, let's just say that they're kind of either remnants of ancient human civilizations on the surface that escaped into the interior or the bottom of the oceans to escape some cataclysm, that we're going to be introduced to them again. And I think that's a kind of like a nice way of having surface humanity get used to the idea of non-human intelligence, so that when we do eventually start to be introduced to visiting extraterrestrials, that it's not going to be such a shock. And I think we're in the process of that. I think it's going to happen. It's going to take a few years, but I think as we get into the 2030s, I think the way it'll probably work is for the rest of this decade, we're going to learn about extraterrestrial life being real. We're going to learn about inner Earth and underwater civilizations being real. Maybe there'll be kind of like haphazard, occasional meetings and so forth. But then as we get into the 2030s, I think that's when these different civilizations are going to start appearing openly, and governments will start to work with them directly.
How did you get interested in the UFO phenomena?
It was 2001 in May. I saw the Disclosure Project press conference video that Stephen Greer had organized, where there were 21 witnesses from the military and the aerospace community that came forward to talk about what they knew about UFOs. And at the time, I was just a full-time professor at American University, and I was shocked. I mean, I thought, wow, if this is real, that would explain why international conflict is so pervasive, that they're covering up this huge set of projects, like a Manhattan Project on steroids, where they're like doing all of this research into recovered craft and reverse engineering and so forth. So, I began to research it. I spent 18 months researching it. And then I made the decision that, well, this is real, and I want to start writing about it. And so that's when I began to write my first exopolitics articles, and they came out at the beginning of 2003.
Well, what was your thought at the beginning? Because was it a shock to you to realize that this is probably real?
It did shock me, because I, like a lot of people, thought that extraterrestrial life is real and it's out there some way, out there somewhere. And wouldn't it be great if it suddenly showed up on Earth and announced itself? Kind of like in the Star Trek series, where you get the Vulcans showing up and first contact is made. I thought, oh, well, wouldn't that be great if that happened sometime soon? So I was shocked when I realized that, well, that actually had happened long ago, but it was covered up. And this whole network of unacknowledged special access programs had been set up to deal with all the different facets of extraterrestrial life and technologies, and it was all being kept secret from the rest of the general public. So the more I studied it, the more I realized that, this is very real. It's just being kept from us all.
Have you ever seen a UFO or ET?
I've seen UFOs. I have had a number of sightings in different places, and these, to me, they were very clearly kind of like not satellites, not planes, not birds. So I would say that they were UFOs of some kind of spacecraft. Now, as for extraterrestrials, I've had a few experiences that I look back on now and say, well, that could have been an extraterrestrial, but I'm not 100% on that. I mean, nothing pretty conclusive there. So what I try and do is research people who have had direct, unambiguous contact and look at their stories and try and make sense of that in terms of the exopolitics big picture.
There are some who believe that there are ETs among us and have been for some time, and they pass as human. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, yeah, I'm convinced on that. I think I met with Robert Dean, who was the first person to kind of introduce me to that idea of extraterrestrials walking among us. And he said that there was this NATO cosmic top secret document called the Assessment that back in the early 1960s had been commissioned by NATO to study the UFO phenomenon. And they concluded that these extraterrestrials look so much like us that they could easily infiltrate, and that they could actually infiltrate to the extent that they could occupy senior positions in the military or the government, and we wouldn't even know it. So that was, I think, pretty compelling that this has been known for a long time, that they do look so much like us that they could be walking amongst us. And there were the classic contactee cases, George Adamski, Howard Menger, and so forth, that talked about extraterrestrials walking among us.
Well, Dr. Salla, thank you so much for taking some time out this evening to spend it with us. I appreciate it, and I know everyone's going to love the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Margie. Appreciate it.
All right. This is Margie Kay, and I'll see you here next week.